All right, for those of you joining over on YouTube, getting ready to go live. Um, we are live. We are now waiting on people to join. Going to be talking news and politics. We have some kind of big news. Matt Gaetz dropped out of the running for Attorney General. He's got a new pick in. For those of you joining, we are talking news and politics, kind of hoping we get going here soon. But we got a lot to talk about. Some more news coming out about some of Donald Trump's cabinet picks. I don't think some of them survived Senate confirmation. One of them already did not, even though the Senate hasn't held a vote or a hearing or anything. And because they knew it was going to be an uphill battle, had withdrew their name from consideration. That was Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz is no longer in the running to be Attorney General. So Matt Gaetz is out as the Attorney General nominee, and said he wants to, not be a distraction for the Trump administration. So we do have that going on. We have a new pick for Attorney General out of the Trump administration. That is Pamela Bondi, the former Florida Attorney General, and way more qualified than Matt Gaetz. Was a good pick, hopefully. Now, where it could be a little concerning, as Attorney General for Florida, Pam Bondi had tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, and I don't know what would happen if somebody brought a challenge to the Affordable Care Act, if Pam Bondi would defend it in her role as Attorney General if she got through the Senate confirmation process. But there's still the confirmation process to go through. She has much more of a chance of getting confirmed than Matt Gaetz. So Matt Gaetz out as Attorney General nominee, withdrew his name today, and Donald Trump came out with a new pick already. Somebody, at least on paper and from experience, does seem to be more qualified. So we'll see how that pick goes. Also hearing that there were even more things coming out about Linda McMahon. Apparently there is some sexual abuse lawsuit involving both her and her estranged husband Vince. As that's coming to light, apparently the Trump campaign and the Trump transition team didn't know anything about that. So we will see if that changes his pick for education secretary. If he even says anything about any of that. Or if it just gets brushed under the rug and continues, and if it even plays a role in the Senate confirmation process at all. All of Trump's picks will have to go through the Senate confirmation process. There was some reporting today in the the New York Times, that said there's at least some House Republicans who would vote with Democrats to prevent the House from agreeing to adjourn, and that way there wouldn't be one half that's adjourning, and then if the Democrats in the Senate filibuster it, either way they don't adjourn, so no recess appointments. His own party is blocking some stuff from getting done and getting accomplished. Marcia says, was so happy Republicans stand against Trump. Yeah, as I've said in other lives, they're going to be busy fighting amongst themselves about trying to get some of this done. They're going to struggle to get some of these positions filled. I think once some of the crazy picks come out and they don't make it, somebody is going to get in Donald Trump's ear and get at least some more qualified people in. Marcia says that's crazy. They didn't before that with drama these last 4 years. Um, yeah, they were more in lockstep with him his first term, but uh, they still didn't side with him all that much. Remember, during his first administration, they shut the government down when they were in charge of the House, they were in charge of the Senate. He was president, and they couldn't agree to fund the government, and they shut the government down for a week or two, something like that. They have been fighting amongst themselves since he became the nominee back in 2016. Kate says, was born and raised in Iowa. Can't believe the white women who voted for Trump. Yeah, I agree. Um, yeah, I was surprised. I thought Iowa had a chance of going blue. We used to be purple, and um, now we're not. What was Biden thinking about giving Ukraine permission to shoot our missiles into Russia? Well, technically, they we gave them permission because I think Biden's trying to force Russia's hand to get them to end the war in the last 9 weeks or so of his administration, to give them a chance to uh, get this resolved so it's not going into the Trump administration. Because so far, all of Trump's plans to end the war involve Russia keeping all of the land it's gained and basically crippling Ukraine, even though Ukraine is putting up a hell of a fight and, ending any more aid to Ukraine. In fact, some people are thinking Donald Trump may try to request all of the aid money that we have given Ukraine back and try to do something that way, and that would destroy Ukraine. Ukraine would be completely crippled. What senator? Oh, you want Reynolds out next election? Oh, that's our glorious governor, COVID Kim Reynolds. Do you, by any chance, take other questions? Is it true we are getting two Social Security checks in December? Um, I had heard that. It was either November or December that there were going to be two checks because of the dates that they process them. It was like you'd get one at the beginning, one at the end, but then you wouldn't get the next month. Like the next month's check would just be a couple days early. Is the way I heard it. Not on Social Security. I don't know that much about it other than what I heard. So the way it sounds, it's either November or December. There are going to be two checks, but you're just getting the following month check like a couple days early. Way I understand it. Who started the war in Ukraine? Russia. Russia invaded Ukraine on bogus allegations. Yeah, Kim Reynolds is our governor here. She became governor um, when uh, uh, Terry Branstad got nominated by Trump to be ambassador to China. Yeah, Russia invaded a sovereign nation like 2.5 years ago. Um, and they're keeping it only contained to Ukraine so far because every country around Ukraine is a NATO nation, and they didn't want to deal with what would happen if Article 5 of NATO got invoked. And we end up doing something like that. Is it a war crime? I'm not entirely sure. I don't think so. I don't think just starting the war is. Now, some of their actions may have been considered war crimes. Do I think we might face a war with Russia? Entirely possible. But this war with Ukraine has proven Russia to be way weaker than we thought they were. We thought they were I think they were like 2, 3, maybe 4 in the world. And Ukraine was way down there on the list as far as where everybody thought they were militarily, and they're still holding their own 2.5 years later. Either Russia's not throwing everything they have at it, or they're they're way weaker than what we thought they were. They had boats in the wrong places. Yeah, they did kind of. I'll be honest, I haven't been following the Ukraine war nearly as close as I have been other things. I just know that they are doing a very good job holding their own against what should have been over in weeks initially. Um, a lot of people, especially Russians, thought that that war was going to be over, um, you know, almost immediately. That area of the world has been fighting for decades. Uh, Not really. They had been mostly stable um, since World War II. World War II, Germany East was all part of Russia as part of the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union fell, um, even for the most part, a lot of it was still not nearly as bad as other parts of the world. Soviet Union, one of the good things it did was bring them some stability that way because there was no political fighting there. One of the few good things. Um, for those of you joining, we're talking news, politics. I guess some of the big news today: Matt Gaetz out as Attorney General nominee. We have the most powerful aircraft fighters called F-150, which no country has. Use it. Um, we wouldn't use it now anyway. We're not, because we're not in the war, and we haven't given any, as far as I know, to Ukraine. Now, if something happened and we got pulled in, definitely. They're saying a senior Korean general got hurt or killed. I hadn't heard that. TJ, there's TJ. I didn't know if you were even on tonight. Sean Penn, the actor, went to Ukraine. He's friends with Ukraine's leader. Huh? Didn't know that. Big news out of today, though. Matt Gaetz has taken his name out of the hat for Attorney General. He will not be the Attorney General after he found out basically there was no way he was getting around the Senate confirmation, and there was going to be a uh, report out from CNN about Matt Gaetz, and he basically took his name out to try to prevent that from coming out. The interview was wonderful with him, and he talks about it. Oh, I bet it was. I haven't seen it, but might have to look that up later. Uh, Normie Son says, thank goodness. Oh, you're talking about Matt Gaetz being out as Attorney General? Yeah. Donald Trump has already made a new, or announced a new nominee. Obviously, none of these picks are official until he becomes president, 12 noon, January 20th. Um, and that is Pamela Bondi from Florida. She was the former Florida Attorney General, practicing lawyer, has a decent law career, seems way more qualified than Gaetz. James says, do you think Gaetz will be able to get back into Congress? I don't think so. Are we still counting those untouched ballots in blue states? Uh, haven't. I know they're still counting ballots. Um, I don't know where all of the counts, recounts, etc. are. I know there are some recounts going. I know they're still counting, and now, as they're finishing up counting California, the popular vote lead is shrinking down to only maybe 1 to 2 million votes in the popular. It's and Donald Trump is less than 50% now. Um, so they're still counting they're still counting. I just haven't seen the latest figures. I don't think anything will come out that will change the um, results, though. I think those will end up being, it's going to be what it is, unless something big happens behind the scenes that we haven't heard about yet. But I'm not hearing anything from any official channels about any, nothing in the media or anybody talking about anything about investigations, criminal charges, lawsuits, anything that looks like it would change this election. If something's happening, behind the scenes, as soon as it's made public, I'll talk about it, but haven't seen anything. There needs to be a freaking investigation. Yeah, there could be, but I just don't know why. I haven't seen anything about it out yet. Will we be okay with a clown running? We will survive. Our Constitution and our safeguards will hold. He's not going to be able to do most of the stuff he wants to do. We're already seeing his own party telling him no. So it's not going to be nearly as bad as it could be. If so, why is the federal government doing, or why is Trump a winner? Well, he's officially not the winner yet. He won't be the winner until each state certifies their election. And once they have done their official certification, that's it. They're done. There's nothing more that can be done. That's part of what they ran up to in 2000 with Bush Gore and the hanging chads and the recounts and all of it. Because went 3 weeks doing recounts and things like that, or maybe even longer. Maybe it was 6 weeks. But they came up against a deadline when they had to get it certified by, and the Supreme Court stepped in and said, "Time's up. We got to stop the recount." And they issued an opinion that they even said in their opinion was for that case only. So what's this talk about about Elon Musk becoming vice president, since they've not heard from Vance? It's people talking out of their ass. They don't know what they're talking about. Elon Musk can't become VP. Should something happen to Vance, whether he resigns or whatever, Donald Trump can appoint somebody, but that person still has to be eligible to be president. And Elon Musk is a naturalized citizen, not a natural born citizen. He's not eligible to be president. Can Trump use his own picked group to do background checks? There is pushback out of the Senate against that. The senators are saying no. We want to use the FBI and the DOJ, and if they don't give consent to the people he's trying to push through, his own party is saying we got to do it the right way. They're concerned about this idea of using third-party private companies to do background checks. They just don't have the resources that the FBI does. But when Donald Trump wants to go around the FBI and the DOJ and things, clearly he's trying to get around some things that he knows would be issues. There's clearly something he's trying to hide. Yeah. But J6 is going to come along, and Kamala is going to be like, no thanks, and not certify. Can't do that. They passed in 2022, I believe, the Electoral Count Reform Act, and they changed how the counting of the electoral votes works. It does not work the same way it did in 2020. Um, Kamala Harris, it says in the updated ruling that they or in the updated law, her role will be purely ceremonial, but it also changed um, the number of senators and members of the House required to reject um, electoral votes. In 2020, it only took one from each the Senate and the House to object, and then they could cause some chaos. It now takes 20% of each, the House and the Senate, and 20% of 435 is like 85 members of the House, and you need 20 senators. They just don't have those kind of numbers. Deegan says, can Trump also bypass the Senate for confirmation and go to the House? No. Nope. House has nothing to do with the confirmation process at all. It is purely a power granted to the Senate. Um, and basically, the only way to go around the Senate confirmation process is if the Senate is in recess, and then the president is allowed to temporarily appoint somebody up until the end of that Congress, which would be January 3rd of 2027. Um, unless the Senate gets together and approves that person between whenever they're appointed and that date. But it doesn't sound like the Senate is going to be going on recess. They would need the House to go on recess because both sides have to agree to a recess. Yeah, I got that one. Um, and they're not uh, able to. They're just not going to be able to go to recess, even if the House agrees. Um, it's going to be an issue. But there was some reporting out in the New York Times that several House Republicans said, should a motion to go on recess come up, they would vote against it alongside all the Democrats. And uh, they're only going to have 218, 219, 220 members of the House, just barely over the 218 margin to have the majority. They can't lose more than like two or three. So they won't be able to agree to a recess. And then in the Senate, Democrats can filibuster a motion to recess. So no recess, no recess appointment. And Donald Trump has to deal with the Senate confirmation process. He may try to go around it or think he can do something, but again, House has nothing to do with it. And even the one way he would have around it, it sounds like his own party's saying, not going to happen. I'm freezing again. I'm on my Wi-Fi and I'm connected. It says strong. Let's see here. Oh, it says I've got a good connection. I wonder why it's freezing. Let me try this. Switch it over. Let's see if that's better for a little while. Yeah, for those of you joining in, we're talking news, politics. Big news out of the day. Matt Gaetz out as Attorney General nominee. Not going to be seeking the nominee or the nomination. We have a new nominee for Attorney General. This is Pamela Bondi out of Florida. Know a little bit about her. The 2022 non-red wave probably saved us. Oh, definitely. The 2022 trickle of red that we got, where they barely took the House. You know, if they would have had 30, 40 seats, it it would have been a lot harder this go round. Why should Trump, other than appointing his nominees, making foreign decisions? What do you mean? I don't quite follow what you're asking. Um, I would say let's see. Um, Now, this Pam Bondi out of Florida was the Attorney General for 2 terms in Florida, is currently a Fox News host, but again, has been an Attorney General, has been a practicing attorney, way more qualified than Matt Gaetz, and so far, from what anybody has uh, looked into, um, hasn't had anything objectionable. Has He is talking about what Ukraine and what he will do now. Haven't heard a whole lot. He did have one kind of a suggestion that he told Zelensky, and Zelensky told him basically shove off, and that was to end the war by giving Russia, basically agreeing to a ceasefire that gave Russia all of the land it had already captured in Ukraine. And Zelensky's like, no, not going to happen. I'm not giving up my territory. The war was supposed to be over the day after the election, remember? Oh, yeah. He said he could end it in a day. He could even end it before he was sworn in. Didn't happen. I mean, he broke his first campaign promise 24 hours in. Saw something just before I came on. Another creator was talking about apparently one of the things he wants to go after is the National Labor Rights Board, which would weaken unions, and they would start taking over a bunch of stuff. Yeah, the NLRB, which covers a lot as far as fair labor laws, things like that. Oh, it's labor relations. Okay. I was thinking it was National Rights Board, but you're probably right, DJ. Isn't that mostly dealing with like unions and stuff? Like with what sets what unions can do, their rights, and things like that. So I know it affects unions. Oh, TJ says it affects unions, yes, but also the rights of non-union workers to organize. Oh, okay. So that's where some of your right to form a union comes from, things like that. Okay, that makes sense. And of course they want to go after that. They want to go after unions. With unions, unions get a lot of stuff done. We've talked about it on several of my lives. And especially when the bigger unions get things done through, especially as far as laws, the rest of us benefit. One of the big ones, well, a lot of the workplace safety stuff has come about because of unions. Your 40-hour work week, overtime pay, things like that, all pushed through because of unions. And somewhere in the 80s, uh, you know, Republicans turned people on unions, made them think they were the enemy. Do you know who Eugene Scalia is? No, I don't know who that is. Not by name. At least. But no, at some point, wasn't it Reagan that turned people against the unions? Made them believe that unions were bad and they were, you know, you didn't want to be a part of a union and everything? Oh, Scalia's son? Okay. What about him? What about Scalia's son? I didn't know much. Like, I know some about Anton Scalia. I didn't know a whole lot about him other than his opinions really on the bench, and that a lot of them were not great, at least out of the controversial ones. Deegan says Trump said he no longer needs any more votes, raised red flags. It did, but I said at the time, and I think now too, he was just bragging. Um, trying to come from a position of strength, that kind of thing. He headed the NLRB under the last Trump administration. Oh, he's an attorney for corporations and he's a union buster. Okay. Oh, is he? And he's going to be involved again this time, trying to bust unions again. Reagan with the air traffic controllers, that was part of it. It'll probably be worse this time. But if it starts going bad, wouldn't surprise me if a bunch of the big unions, you know, do what they do, and I don't know if they would be able to strike over it or not, but put their weight behind some stuff, especially when it comes time for the midterms and things. Talked about it in numerous lives. One of the things that's going to be saving us a lot in the upcoming years is they got such thin margins in both chambers of Congress. They're going to be busy fighting amongst themselves, and they're just not going to be able to get a bunch of this stuff passed that they're going to want to pass. It's going to help us out a lot. Is it true there's a million men march to Washington in process? Haven't heard. Coco Clifford, like, oh, you're talking about what they're going to be able to not be able to get past. They're going to be fighting each other on a bunch of stuff. Remember when he was president the last time, they shut the government down in 2017 or 2018 because they couldn't pass a budget for a number of days, 2 weeks. Matt says they can't pass a thing that will all be executive orders. Well, no, it won't. Well, it might be executive orders. The thing about executive orders are they are the weakest form of law, and those will get tied up in courts and tossed, especially if they're if they're overstepping or unconstitutional things like that. Dems should vote against debt ceiling and let the government default. No, we don't want to do that. That would be bad. Things that they would be arguing and fighting on. Well, like when it comes to gutting Social Security, gutting Medicare, Medicaid, things like that, their own party would, like the Republicans themselves, they don't have the votes to pass some of this stuff because their own people are going to say this is a dumb idea, this is a bad idea. Trump would own the default, but we'd suffer the burden. The only reason things work the way they do is because we have the ability to borrow money. Our government has operated for a very long time in the red. We pay our bills by borrowing money and pay interest on those loans. Have for, decades, if not going back to the Civil War, maybe even earlier. If we default, we're not going to be able to continue to borrow or not borrow at the same rates. It's going to cost us way more money. It's just not effective. Is Jack Smith done? Yeah, he's probably going to be done. There's going to be a report released, I've heard, of his findings, and that will be made public before January 20th. And I think Jack Smith will probably go back to doing what he was doing, uh, I believe, prosecuting war criminals in The Hague. Do you think Biden will be pressured to step aside for Kamala to take over? I just don't see it happening. What's the point? Other than a big giant middle finger to Donald Trump, what's the point of Kamala taking over for the last 9 weeks of the administration? Everyone thinks this is some kind of a big thing, and it would be momentous that we would get that hurdle out of the way, but it doesn't gain us anything. What could she do in those 9 weeks? It wouldn't save our country. The term would still ends January 20th at 12 noon. If she became president today, that doesn't give her 4 years. That gives her till the end of Joe Biden's term, which is January 20th at 12 noon. It doesn't change anything. It's not like she gets 4 years from now. A lot of people get that confused. Got him. The entire world is laughing at us for electing a felon who attempted a coup. Exactly. Exactly. I think they're going to, after this Trump administration, you are going to see I wouldn't say a lot, but at least one or two potential amendments added. Um, and probably a whole bunch of laws come out that are going to limit the power of the president and limit who can run for president, things like that. I think Democrats are going to come in and pass some stuff. It wouldn't surprise me if we see an amendment saying, you know, if you are a convicted felon, you are not eligible to be president. If you are this, you are not eligible. Some additional requirements. As of right now, there are only three things that are required in order to run for president in 5 years from now. In 5 years. Well, actually, potentially in two. Democrats could take over the Senate and the House in midterms, but I don't know if they would have the numbers then to pass constitutional amendments. It might, but potentially you could see something like that after this, especially if it's as bad as it could be. Remember, now this is nobody that's in the Senate now was in the Senate then, or the House, except maybe Mitch McConnell and Chuck Grassley. But in the 50s, right after FDR died in the 40s, and been elected to his fourth term, Congress said, hey, you know what? We don't like this idea of presidents being able to run for a limited number of terms. Let's change that. It wouldn't surprise me if they pass something or try to pass something or start an amendment, to change some of the rules because of Donald Trump. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if they passed some sort of laws about cabinet picks saying these people can't even be considered or whatever automatically because of how bad this incoming administration could be. Amendment to the Constitution, which takes 2/3. It does take 2/3 of both houses, and it takes 38 states, 3/4 of the states. Like, passing an amendment is a long, hard process. It is not. It was never meant to be easy. They didn't want an easy process to change the fundamental document to which our government is based on. But I think you could see an amendment or two come out because of the Trump administration and how bad it could be. You might see some laws about who can do what, things like that, some reactionary things because of how bad this next presidency could be. Now, maybe I'm going to be entirely wrong, and everything that they have said will work out the way they say, and all of the experts that are in their fields are going to be completely wrong. I don't think that's what's going to happen. But if it does, and everything he says works, great. I would love to see it. Something I saw a different creator talk about last night after I got done with my live, and I don't remember which creator it was. He asked this question: why is it when Democrats propose anything, they're always asked to, how are you going to pay for it? They have to justify it with paying for it somehow. But Republicans, they're never asked how they're paying for anything. Donald Trump says he wants to round up all of the immigrants into this country, all of the undocumented immigrants, all the criminal immigrants, and he even was talking about denaturalizing American citizens, things like that, ending birthright citizenship and deporting people like that, which could cost unknown amounts of money. And he said there's no upper limit as to what that could cost. Well, when he says that, how come they're never asked how are you going to pay for it? They're never asked. How are you going to pay for it? Yeah. We've already seen what happens with deregulation. Deregulation is a bad policy idea. The regulations are there because something bad. Thank you, TJ. You got to it right before I could. But deregulation, that's part of what led to the train derailment in Ohio. Does Trump have power to gather people from job sites for deportation? That's unknown. I mean, you hear all the time about ICE raids happening to go in and, they show up. And that's happened for years. So maybe, but to do it on the scale he's talking about, even Rand Paul said, he doesn't like the idea of the U.S. military handling it and turning the U.S. military on civilians. If Rand Paul, who's, usually kind of nutty as a Republican, if he's the voice of reason, your party's got problems. I've been thinking about this. I've talked about it in other lives, though. I think as far as some of what they're going to do, as far as the, immigration stuff and the deportations and stuff go, it wouldn't surprise me if he comes out and says, yeah, we got all these great policies. They're going to do so great. Never tells you what the policies are. And then says, weeks later that, well, our policies are so effective, we've eliminated all of the criminal immigrants that have come into the country. It just does a victory lap without actually doing much. What do I think about Stephen Miller and his hate of people? Stephen Miller's a clown. TJ says it's all for show. They'll report 50K and say it was 50 million. Oh yeah, easy. Easy. Something like that. It's all performative with him. That's why he had 56K show up for him at the Ellipse on January 6th to his speech, and I think he still says it was a million people that showed up. It's all about numbers, and he makes up numbers as he goes. Everything he does will be the biggest, the greatest, the best. We've seen this song and dance before. Saw today that one of Ramaswamy's and Elon Musk's ideas to eliminate wasteful spending in the government is to uh, immediately eliminate any work from home option and mandate work in office for all federal employees. And basically says, well, we can eliminate 25% of the work from home jobs, because they won't want to come back to the office, won't be able to because they don't live close enough or whatever. And the numbers I saw was there's like 2.3 million people, something like that, working from home. Uh, and if they get their numbers, that would be 600,000 people without a job. How does that make America great again, having 600,000 people without a job? No plan to grow jobs in the private sector. Not really. He's got slogans, but not plans. Why is the government doesn't hold Trump's feet to the fire when he lies? Yeah, First Amendment, he can say what he wants. Notice how they don't talk about the wall anymore? Yeah, they dropped the idea of the wall because he's not talking about it. Once he quit talking about the wall and Joe Biden got in and just ended construction of it, once he quit being the voice piece of it, they quit talking about it. They gave up. Speaking of the wall, TJ says it got cut up with Milwaukee cordless sawzalls. I mean, we heard a lot of it was falling over within days, years of it being built. The new stuff he built was subpar at best. But Steve Bannon's got a court date coming up here next month for grifting about building the wall. He was running some kind of a scheme where he was getting Trump supporters to send him money to help make sure the wall got built. And the Trump base, who don't understand how much works, especially with government, went, oh yeah, that makes sense. The government is having this private guy fundraise to build the wall, so I'm going to send him money to build the wall. And he bulked him out of millions. And now he's going to court for fraud. And I don't know how long it's going to take for this court date to go, but potentially he could be not only either on trial at the beginning of the Trump presidency or be convicted by the beginning of the Trump presidency, awaiting a sentencing date. He will probably be going back to prison, and those are state charges. Donald Trump can't pardon him. He can try to lean on the state to make something happen, but again, it's in New York State. New York's going to tell them to, where they can go. New York's not going to listen to that bullshit. Said several times in this live and other lives, they're going to be fighting amongst themselves. I mean, now that I haven't heard much out of Marjorie Taylor Greene, now that Matt Gaetz dropped out of the running for Attorney General, but she was willing to burn it all down if the ethics report on Matt Gaetz came out. And she was going to release everything on everybody that she had. All sorts of information on all of it. They can't get along with each other. How are they supposed to govern? Not to mention, they're only going to have a couple seat majority in the House, and he's already Matt Gaetz has already resigned. Elise Stefanik got picked for something. I don't remember what her position is going to be. So there's two resignations that are going to require special elections. It is entirely possible after special elections that the Democrats flip the House. I don't know if, I mean, that would be the best thing for democracy and prevent a big chunk of what Donald Trump wants to do from getting done. But at the same point, do we really want to flip the House? Because if we flip the House, then they can just say, well, the reason Trump couldn't get anything done was it was all the Democrats' fault. If they don't flip the House and they still have a thin majority, getting nothing accomplished, is that better? Or is it better to have the Democrats in control of the House and being a major roadblock? I don't know. I kind of like the idea of them being in the way. Block everything they could. And then when he steps out of line, the House could once again impeach him. Especially with Democrats in office, in the House. If they somehow, thanks to special elections, regain control. That's entirely possible. Let them have the House till midterms? Yeah. Watch them spend 2 years, get nothing accomplished, and see what they come up with for excuses as everything burns around them. They'll be flailing. Yeah, they can't govern. They've elected, in a lot of cases, they've elected unserious politicians. Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene, what do they bring as far as being a serious politician? Not much. They're just loud. They're loud and angry. If they kick anybody out who's got any sort of ideas to help people and better the economy and to do things that are better for people. I've been talking about it in numerous videos. I've been wondering if it's not possible that the Democrats could end up in a situation like they had back in 1932 after Herbert Hoover screwed up the handling of the stock market crash and the Great Depression, or the beginnings of the Depression. And could the Democrats end up in a situation where they come in with some sort of a policy, some kind of another New Deal type big policy that would fix the economy, put money in everyday people's pockets, and shore up all of our social safety nets, and end up having power in the presidency and both chambers of Congress for 20 years? Roosevelt came in with the New Deal, and once he started putting people to work, with the TVA, and he got food stamps in, and Social Security, and the FDIC, all those big things that have saved us time and time again and helped a lot of people out that people take for granted now. But when those policies started happening, and people started benefiting from it, Democrats were able to turn that into basically 20 years of being in the majority. With the exception of 2 years under Truman. Could Trump and Vance get impeached halfway through the term and then Hakeem become president? Yes, but. Then there's always a but. They would have to be impeached and removed by the Senate. Would take 2/3 of the Senate, which is 67 senators. Now, if it's a complete shit show and there is enough there that even their own party's like, yeah, we've had enough, maybe they both go, but they would have to be removed together in order for Hakeem Jeffries to become president. And that's assuming Hakeem is the Speaker of the House. Won't happen. They love power too much. Yeah, I just don't see if it's egregious enough that it needs to happen, maybe, but like that's one of those. It's an extreme long shot. No, Civil War is not our best bet. Um, Now, the other thing that could happen along that line of Vance and Trump both getting impeached is if Donald Trump should die, Vance would become president. There would be no vice president until Vance appoints somebody and gets um, approved through Congress. Well, if in the the time while they're trying to figure out if they should approve that pick, if Vance would have been impeached and removed again, that could happen. But those are all like less than 1%, less than a percent chance of even happening. They're very unlikely scenarios, but that is the way things would work if those things would happen. I'm just not holding out hope that anything happens. Uh, Trump or Vance will be president all the way to 2028. But if the economy craters as bad as it could, if he runs, he doesn't get reelected in 28. And I don't know who the Republicans would run. Donald Trump cannot run in 2028. They don't have the votes to change uh, the Constitution. They just don't. Um, so they can't allow him to run for a third term. And um, so he can't run. Who in the Republican Party can capture the crowd and the base the way Donald Trump does? No one. They don't have anybody. They don't have anybody that can catch that kind of lightning in a bottle. People don't like J.P. Mandel. Yeah, exactly. J.D. Vance is ridiculous. He's unliked by his own party. And he's going to have the problem Kamala Harris had in this election, in part. A lot of people didn't know anything about Kamala Harris till Joe Biden stepped aside and said, I'm not running for re-election. I endorse Kamala Harris. She was in the background and forgotten about. First Lady Musk gonna run? Not eligible. Elon Musk is not eligible. So far, it has always been held that natural born citizen requires you to have birthright citizenship. Um, Elon Musk is a naturalized citizen, so he is not. He doesn't have birthright citizenship. He got his citizenship later in life. A lot of people have. Um, that's why there was such a controversy over Obama, and they kept trying to say he wasn't. Um, natural born, that he was actually born in Kenya to non American parents or something. They tried to make something up. The thing is, even if he would have been born in Kenya, his mom was an American citizen, therefore, American citizen by birth. But they were trying to make an issue there. Um, and that's when all of that kind of came out, that there is a definitive distinction between birthright citizenship and naturalized citizen later. You don't see some women voting for Vance compared to Trump. Oh, definitely. Vance is way more awkward. Um, and it's going to be easier to stick the creepy factor with him, where I don't know why people didn't get it with Donald Trump, but he was found liable by a jury for having assaulted E. Jean Carroll. I mean, how much clearer could that be about what kind of a person he is? And then he lied about it. And he defamed her numerous times. He owes her $90 million dollars right now, something like that. Um, so yeah, we're talking news, politics for those joining in. Um, did, did you hear what RFK say about Trump? No, I don't. I don't know what the latest thing is on RFK. He's another one I don't think passes the Senate confirmation hearings. He may not even be the nominee going to up to the point when he gets a confirmation hearing. He may have to back out like Matt Gaetz did. But what did RFK say? Well, TJ got another one. Yeah, I don't see anybody amazing coming out of the Republicans. They've pushed everybody out of the Republican Party that was halfway decent, and they just don't have anybody to um, capture that base. What do I think about Pam Bondi? Don't know a lot about her. From what I have gathered and the little bits I've seen in other creators' videos and the couple articles I read as she was nominated or announced as a nominee. I guess technically the nomination doesn't become official until he's president, but semantics. Um, she's way more qualified than Matt Gaetz. She has been Attorney General for the state of Florida for 2 terms, had a private practice. Yes, is now a Fox News host, but had a career as an attorney general and sounds like did a decent job as attorney general. A couple of the things about Pam Bondi, uh, a lot of people are thinking she would be less likely to engage in the retribution stuff that Donald Trump wanted to do, going after um, his political enemies with charges, trumped up fake charges, not going to go after reporters and news outlets, things like that, with the weight of the DOJ. Um, the issues that I've seen about her potentially going to be that, like, if the Affordable Care Act comes up in a lawsuit, is she going to defend it? Or is she just going to turn to the Supreme Court and say, we're not taking a side on this, we're choosing not to defend the law, which attorney generals can do, and they have all done it all the way up and down almost in every administration, and could choose to try to like not defend the Affordable Care Act or something and let the Supreme Court do what it's going to do. That would be what I'm more worried about, but I think Pam Bondi is a more qualified pick and definitely a Trump supporter, like, through and through, but definitely more qualified than Matt Gaetz. Are you worried about Trump's rhetoric internationally? Always. Um, he was a joke the first time around. Um, I don't know what our allies and stuff are talking about behind closed doors, just in case as some kind of a backup plan, but I'm sure they're talking about something. You know, who knows what he could do? He could potentially, he's already tried to give up the land that Russia has taken from Ukraine and getting Ukraine to just agree to give it up permanently. Um, who knows what kind of stuff he does. I mean, he was a joke the last time. Remember, he walked across the demilitarized zone into North Korea, which no US president had done. And the reason that no president had done that was because they didn't want to give legitimacy to is it Kim Jong Un now, or is it Il? One of the two, whichever one's the son, whichever one's in charge. I get them backward all the time. But he didn't want to legitimize. We didn't want to legitimize them being in charge. It's Un now. Yeah. Um, I couldn't remember which one was the father and which one was the son, but they we didn't want to. Nobody in the U.S. wanted to legitimize them by meeting with them or anything until Trump came along, because he didn't understand what we were trying to do. He didn't understand how that worked, and he admired somebody with the leadership style of Kim Jong Un, where wins in a landslide every time he runs, and when even if he gets beat, the other person steps aside, and supposedly took a $20 million loan out from him, and then never paid it. Now, the only part about that doesn't surprise me is that he never paid it. If he did take the loan and didn't pay it, that is so on brand with Donald Trump. He doesn't pay his bills, doesn't pay his creditors. Um, I remember being in high school and one of Donald Trump's things was going bankrupt, and there was an article in the paper about it, about how as his employees are having to file for unemployment, and the company's going belly up and they're not getting paid. He had himself a golden parachute built into the contract, so before they paid anybody else, he got this big check, even if even as it was failing. Yeah, he doesn't like paying anybody if he can help it. And then he ties them up in the courts with litigation, etc., um, all the time. Trump bragged about beautiful letters from Kim and said they fell in love. It wouldn't surprise me with him. I know he had like some of the letters like framed or something, or copies of them framed and posted somewhere, and brags about getting letters from Kim Jong Un. Yeah. Did he ever pay Giuliani? No. Nope. Giuliani's fighting to keep most of his possessions right now, as he's being forced to turn over all of his assets because they defamed Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman, and to the tune of $148 million. Rudy doesn't have $148 million, and he went from being America's mayor and at one time a serious contender for the presidency. People were thinking he had an actual shot of being president of the United States after 9/11, to being the joke he is now. I appreciate the likes and the shares. Um, yeah, Rudy Giuliani, he's going to be penniless before it's all said and done. He's fighting to keep anything he can. Um, it's just strange how far he has fallen. Far a lot of them have fallen. Look at Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy. Now I've never used a My Pillow. I've heard they're junk. Um, but he took a $1 million company selling these pillows, and made it worthless. Everyone that gets with Trump, yeah, they burn themselves down. Now some people that Donald Trump is around, they were already on that path to begin with. I mean, Matt Gaetz was already going down that path on his own. Um, Next is Musk. Yeah. I mean, Musk, he's overhyped in my opinion to begin with. I mean, how smart can he really be? He made a bullshit offer to buy Twitter for 44 million, 44, was it 44 million or billion? And now it's worth 10. Why isn't Trump in jail? It was 44 billion and now it's worth 10 billion. Yeah. Um, why isn't Trump in jail? Because the justice system moves slow and because our current Attorney General, Merrick Garland, sat on his hands for 2 years. Um, because he didn't want to appear political and go after the guy that Joe Biden just beat in a presidential race. So he sat on his hands for 2 years till he got enough people and enough public sentiment against him to do something. Then he appoints Jack Smith, and in 10 months, Jack Smith had a case built up enough to bring indictments and charges. 10 months. If Jack Smith had been given the reins, um, you know, say October of 21, Donald Trump would be in a prison cell right now. 3 years ago, you didn't think America would fall back into a Trump presidency, but yeah. I didn't think we would either. I didn't think we were that dumb. And it's looking like the problem wasn't that Donald Trump was more popular or anything else. It was that Democrats voted down ballot but did not vote for Kamala Harris. And another one bites the dust. Yeah. Um, no, Trump is definitely not the best thing that has happened to this country in ages. They, what did he accomplish in his first term? It was a crushing loss. I was convinced, if you go back and watch my videos from before the election, in numerous videos, I said Kamala Harris was going to win by 10 to 15 million popular vote, easy, and a bigger electoral margin than what Joe Biden won by. Everything was pointing that day. Oh, he's already gone. I block all of them. Well, my moderator, TJ's getting them all. But I don't interact with the Trump supporters, the MAGAs. They're not worth the time. They come in, they say the same stuff. They report you live. They get you taken down. They get your videos flagged for stuff. They flag your videos, your comments, etc. They don't add to the conversation. And it used to be, I listen to all sides. When you've got a good idea, I will listen to it. Problem is, Republicans haven't had a good idea in 10 years. Pretty much, actually, they probably haven't had a good idea since Obama got inaugurated in 2008. All they say is Trump 2024. Yeah, pretty much. And they are the sorest winners I've ever seen. I've seen toddlers who, that have been better winners than them. But they're mad because we're not acting like they did, so they look foolish for how bad they acted in 2020. And they want us to be mad and angry and go after them, etc., so they can play the victim again. They like being the victim. And they're not getting that. All we're saying is, Uh, we hope you get everything you voted for. And they don't like that because they're no longer the victim. I wouldn't. I don't think they gave Trump the win from the beginning. Uh, can't tell if that one's another one or not. But no, now I can definitely tell. Um, so as that Trumper was pointing out, it wasn't. I've been asking this question since she lost. For everybody who's irritated that she got the nomination after Joe Biden said he wasn't running, would they still be irritated if Joe Biden had died that day and Kamala Harris just became president and continued the race? And the answer probably is no, because that would be the natural order of things. They're just irritated and mad because Joe Biden decided late in the game to step aside and Kamala Harris took over. The people wanted, some of the Democrats and the Democratic leaning voters wanted some big fight at the convention, a big, nominating battle, trying to get everybody on your side and make it messy and, have another primary or something last minute and get an entire primary done in like a week and a half. And there just wasn't time. Could Biden pass for the presidency? Yeah. Will he? Probably not. Because what changes? I talked about it. I was talking about it earlier in this live. Somebody else suggested it. And I said, if Joe Biden steps aside today and resigns today and makes Kamala Harris president effective tomorrow, okay? Her term is still up January 20th at 12 noon. Donald Trump still comes in. If he steps aside, she doesn't get 4 years from the date he stepped aside. She would be 47 and it would make his merch worthless, but she would still only be the president up until January 20th when Donald Trump takes over. It doesn't change the outcome of the election. It doesn't change anything other than make his merch worthless, and it is kind of petty. The only benefit I've been thinking about of him stepping aside is that it would get if he would step aside and make her president from now till January 20th, it would get out of the way of us having had a woman president and a woman of color as president. Those two things would have been done. And oh, already done. Went to get a couple of them. TJ, you're ahead of me. It only leaves Trump with a warehouse of worthless 47 gear. Yeah, that's basically it. If she becomes president now, all it does is make his gear worthless. If the Democrats had the House and the Senate and she could maybe pass some legislation, maybe then do it. But with Republicans in control of the House, they're not going to pass anything anyway. She won't be able to sign any bills. There's, other than the optics of getting it out of the way of having a woman president and be done, so you could that way there's never anybody saying, well, I'd be the first woman president, or there would nobody ever, the next time a woman runs, that there'd be this question, well, we've had two women run for office before and they've never won. Could it happen at this time? That discussion would all be gone because we would have a woman president. Other than that, there's no benefit to Joe Biden stepping aside now. Best thing he can do is write out his last 9 weeks and wait for the incoming administration. Harris and Michelle be a good. That could be an interesting ticket. That could be a very interesting ticket. The thing about the Democrats is they have a deep bench. They have a lot of people that could run in 2028. Shapiro, you got Gavin Newsom, you got Pete Buttigieg, you got Kamala Harris could make a full run of it on her own and stand on her own 2 feet. The problem is she went from Joe Biden not running to being the nominee and running and had 100 days to finish the race. She ran a great campaign. About the one thing I kind of have an issue with the way she ran her campaign, because it didn't work, is she spent too much time with Liz Cheney. They went too far right, trying to get the disenfranchised Trump voters, and then in exchange disenfranchised the far right or the far left Democratic voters. They didn't want to vote for her because they thought she was too far to the right because she was with Liz Cheney. Joe's a 5-star strategist. He still has executive orders to thwart Trump's earliest plans. Problem with executive orders, they can be overturned just as easily. The minute Donald Trump can get in, he can write an executive order rescinding any executive order Biden wrote. They don't. They are. There's no carryover. There's nothing you can do with an executive order that can't be undone by an executive order. Yeah, they can be undone in a day. That's the problem with executive orders. You can do a lot with them. You hope MAGA is going to be picking the field they're going to work in. Yeah, they're going to be in for a rude awakening when, you know, food prices go sky high, everything else goes sky high, because there are jobs that are not just getting done. Um, Again, thinking about this earlier today, there was an article I read like 20 years ago uh, that was talking to an immigrant. I don't remember here legally, not etc. That was talking about being a dishwasher and why like 15 years still a dishwasher. Why they haven't tried to be a waiter or a host or anything like that, and said simple. I always have a job. I can go to any restaurant. I think this was in New York City, and said I can go to any restaurant and get a job as a dishwasher. Nor, a lot of people don't want to do that job. They want the fancy job. I'm trying to paraphrase from this article I read like 20 years ago, but they said they want the glamour job of being the waiter, the host, the manager of the restaurant, the bartender, those kind of jobs. They don't want to do the dishwashing job. So he goes, well, I can go to any restaurant and get a job. It is a tough job, but it's a necessary job. You need somebody doing the dishes in a restaurant. But DJ Angel says, and Mexicans are good workers, 7 days a week. Yeah, I know a lot of them that would work 7 days a week, never complain about not getting a day off. Agriculture, construction, poultry, meat plants, hospitality will all suffer. Yeah, exactly. Um, I don't think the mass deportations are going to be nearly as bad as TJ pointed out earlier in the live. It's probably going to be something like 50,000, maybe even 5,000, and he'll say it was 50 million and you know over exaggerate, call it a win. Yeah, and as those jobs and as those people aren't working in those things, prices are going to go up as you have to pay people. It's it's a double-edged sword. You have migrant workers, undocumented immigrants working in those fields. They're getting paid less in a lot of cases. You know what happens when you have to pay, you know, non-immigrants, non-migrants, things like that. A better wage because you can't find anybody. Well, you got to charge. You got to pass those charges on to somewhere. Businesses won't just eat those extra costs. I've worked in, basically some version of retail my entire adult life. The cost always gets passed on to the consumer. If they can find a way to rope in something as a percentage of what they have to make for profit, it's they will. You know, and they pay taxes on all that they buy, and a lot of them. What happens? I've seen other creators talk about this. Um, they go in, uh, and a lot of them have fake papers or non-valid papers, but nobody says anything because they show up. They show up, they work, etc. They pay Social Security. They will never be able to claim it. They pay into Medicare, Medicaid, and just straight taxes, and a lot of times can never file a tax refund. And they do work hard. Most of them do not work under the table. Um, and the problem with that is because uh, they have to. If you go routinely and get large amounts of cash from the bank, and by large, it's anything over $2,000 routinely, you have the IRS up your ass trying to figure out why. As I think it was Tom Powell was talking about it. You routinely get large blocks of cash. You do it more than a few weeks in a row, and the IRS needs, they are there. Bank says no more money, even if you got millions in the bank. And they say, yeah, you got to explain where all this money's going. Why are you needing these large amounts of cash all the time? And some of that has to come with what they were doing with uh, the war on drugs. But in part, they're also trying to make sure you're not doing anything to try to skate around taxes. There's limits to how often you can get large amounts of cash, uh, so you can't pay them under the table. It just does, they may get paid a little bit here and a little bit there for small jobs, but definitely not enough for, like, they're not getting their whole paycheck all the time. Well, I've been going about an hour and a half. I'm gonna wrap up. Um, I thank you guys for taking the time to join the live, comment, all that good stuff. It's been a great conversation. Um, for those of you that are interested, um, I do record all my lives. This will be up over on YouTube probably sometime tomorrow. Uh, Elizabeth, as far as uh, them working with papers from Puerto Rico, Puerto Ricans are American citizens, so I don't know what you mean about them having papers because they would just be U.S. citizens. They're not immigrants or anything like that. They have to show up with their birth with, their normal forms of ID. But anyway, like I said, I'm gonna wrap up. I appreciate the conversation. Um, don't know when I'm gonna go live next, but you know, seem to be doing it a lot more frequently. Again, gonna be posted up over on my YouTube channel. They are. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying, Elizabeth. But this will be up over on my YouTube channel. I am Analytical Iowan on YouTube. There is a link in my bio. I post all my TikToks, all my lives. I do have a government answers playlist over there where when I see people getting things wrong about how the government works, I try to do an explanation video, but a longer video than what I normally do in a TikTok. I try to keep my TikTok videos 4 minutes or less. Um, and a lot of my explanation videos over on my government answers playlist on YouTube go like 10, 12, maybe 15. So I've got those over there. If anybody wants to check that out. But like I said, I record all my lives. Again, thanks TJ for being such a great moderator. And thank everybody for coming in and joining me tonight. And I hope you guys have a great night. I will catch you later. Awesome. So just wrapped up another live. I'm gonna get this posted. I thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and I'll catch you the next time I go live.